So they might be opening their mouth to talk and then nothing is coming out.
Sometimes it's like it can even block you from breathing.
But it's something I was born with.
Letter T, letter K, letter G, letter S.
T, S, and D.
So I remember I was asked by my English I was asked by my English teacher to share my book because it was like I was reading from a different set.
Now, speaking fluently comes easily for most of us. However, it can be a challenge to some. Thank you for tuning in to Health Nuggets. Our topic of discussion today being stammering or stuttering, depending on where you are. But stammering and stuttering basically mean one and the same thing. So we will get to hear from two gentlemen who stammer, as well as hear from a speech therapist, just to understand how speech can be improved. So stay tuned. My name is Aida Munzatsi, and of course, Health Nuggets starts now.
He never took priest's orders, possibly because of a stammer.
Stammering or stuttering is a speech disorder in where an individual repeats or prolongs words, syllables, or phrases. A person with a stammer may also stop during speech and make no sound for certain syllables.
Stammering at times it used to be a challenge to me because I was struggling with the fact that sometimes you have difficulties in at times maybe expressing yourself. Like remember when I was in school, sometimes maybe you have not understood some something and you want to ask. So sometimes you feel like I think I'm not going to ask because I might stammer along the way. And that the feeling of embarrassment was actually dragging me back. So I usually I face that challenge and I have to hide it to myself. I keep it to myself because I can't stand that embarrassment. Like you want to ask a question, then you are stuck along the way. And sometimes maybe your classmates don't understand you, they end up laughing at you, and now when they start laughing at you, you feel so discouraged and everything now disappears. Like me even introducing myself, like introducing my name, it starts with a letter that I'm having a difficulty in pronouncing. So there are letters like letter T, letter K, letter G, letter S. It's like those letters that starts by like you are blocking the air, then you release by you release by force. So those letters I'm having a difficulty in. But at times there are some. It depends also with the surrounding.
Yeah, some words are more difficult to pronounce, like think T, S, and D, and TH, and SH, and F. So sometimes when I'm talking, there are times like the word would be stuck at the back of the throat, and it would be a challenge for the words to come out. But it would be more pronounced when I was a kid. Like I would tell a story in front of the class, and a lot of the children would think it was funny, but although I would feel bad, but it's just let it roll off your shoulders. It just, it's just something that you deal with, especially some kids were more mean than others, but I think it used to bother other people than it bothered me, but when they would make fun of me, I would feel bad, but it's just one of those things that it's just one of those challenges that you have to deal with. But I would say it's just a challenge like any other challenge, just that some people are born with more money than others. So those with less money have to just make do with what they have. So I just take stammering as a challenge to overcome. But I've never lost sleep over it or been depressed just because I stammer. But there are other bigger things, the other more apparent things to deal with than my stammer. But like I said, I think it has bothered other people more than it's bothered me.
Although stammering can't be completely treated, there are things that one can do to improve speech. People who stammer develop some strategies that reduces the speech disruptions.
So I can say right now I'm doing so well, because initially, when I was young, I was really struggling. Because I remember at times when I used to speak even to my mom, sometimes she's like, "Oh, shut up!" Like, I was really struggling. Sometimes it's like it can even block you from breathing. But as I grew up, now I've learned, and you feel it, like you especially when you are expressing yourself. There's a way like you are arranging your wordings. So sometimes you feel like it will block somewhere. So before I get there, I have to look for a substitute. So when I was young, like I just knew one language, and looking for that substitute was really hard for me. So I had to struggle pronouncing that word. But right now, like I can easily look for a substitute of the same word, and I can pronounce it with ease.
I guess when I'm excited, it happens. So it depends on the situation. I think I may stammer more when I'm nervous. To tell you the truth, I've not done like a self-study when it's worse, when it's not worse. But yeah. So, but I think over time I've been able to deal with it better as opposed to when I was a child. It used to be more pronounced when I was a kid than right now.
Sometimes I usually speak to myself. Sometimes even I record myself, like I just record a short clip. I'm trying to read something, or like trying to explain something. Then through that, like you learn. Yeah, so I've been practicing it on my own. That's why I've improved a lot. Otherwise, it was a struggle.
If I say the word slowly, it'll be able to come out than if I try to hurry. If I try to speak real quickly, then it might come.
People who stammer undergo difficult moments, especially in social situations. Many have undergone stigma, and due to this, they shy off from expressing themselves in public.
The fear of, having that fear of, you feel like you can embarrass yourself. Like, you are addressing some people, and, they're expecting that fluency. But now you are there, you are so tensed and all that, then you start stammering. So you are fearing like it might get to a point where I start stammering. So you feel like I'll embarrass myself. So that fear now is going to stir that stammering. Maybe it could not have been there, but now because that fear has stepped in, then definitely along the way you might end up stammering.
I'm sure there are people who have the kind of challenges I'm facing, and their age mates might make fun of them. I would just say that I don't think they would be doing themselves any favor to be too self-conscious about it, but I guess the best thing would be to just speak slowly than they would normally do. But not to be too self-conscious about it, even though people make fun of them. I'll just take it as a challenge to overcome. It's like if you're climbing a hill, and then somebody climbing a hill without a bag, a weight, and somebody else climbing a hill with a weight. So the one with the weight may still be able to make it, but the one without it will reach quicker because they've less baggage. That's how I take it. It's just the hand you've been dealt with, and it's just something that you have to deal with. Yeah.
Well, so we have an opportunity to understand more about this disorder that affects speech fluency, and not just understanding it, but getting to know some of the interventions of the same. And speech therapy is considered one of the interventions, and if given early, it can definitely improve speech fluency. And on show, I'm being joined by Lorna Mudhamia Ochido, who is a speech therapist. Lorna, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay, so let us, even before talking of our topic of discussion, stammering, I just see passion in you as far as our speech and communication is concerned. Probably you can just tell us slightly about the journey and where the passion comes from.
I think I'm just a very passionate human, and I am a incessant problem solver. So I like to solve problems, and a problem that I encountered when, just after I'd finished my high school, that, well, it didn't just happen then, but my younger sister, had a communication disorder, so she is hearing impaired, and there weren't any speech therapists that my family could actually, we could access for her. And so right there, I was confronted with a problem, a challenge that really was very close to my heart. This was a family member that had a challenge communicating. And even at the age I was at then, I could foresee the myriad, the challenges that my sister would encounter if she wasn't able to communicate. A lot of us take it for granted, communication. You'd think, communication is everywhere. That is how you get your needs met. That is how it's a big contributor of quality of life, just being able to associate and chat with your friend, meet with your, family, all that. Like what we are doing right now is communicating. Can you imagine if I couldn't understand what you're saying, or I couldn't express my needs, or I couldn't even express them in a way that isn't as fluent or as smooth as I'm doing it right now. You talked about speech fluency, and I think the term that most people are familiar with is stammering or stuttering.
So you've brought in something very key. I would like you to tell us, first of all, what stammering is, and is it considered a disability?
I would say, so stammering or stuttering, so the terms there really are interchangeable. The same way we are called speech therapist or speech pathologist is one and the same thing, although it's very dependent on geographic location of where you are. So in America, it's referred to as stuttering, I believe. In Australia, it's stuttering. In Kenya, we understand that condition to be stammering. Yeah. So stammering is a communication disorder. It's a speech. It affects speech or the fluency. So fluency is how fluent or how smooth your words are coming out. So that is what it affects. So it's a fluency, it's a type of a fluency disorder. It is mostly genetic. Genetically, there's a genetic predisposition to stammering. Actually, 60% of people who stammer can link it back to their family, yes. And so that could be a dad, it could be a sister, it could be an auntie, it could be a family member. And then the rest, it's just to do with, it's neurological, so to do with the brain. And the brain is very complex, and it affects, or the brain is the one that controls many, aspects of, the body, and speech and language are controlled by the brain as well. And there seems to be a misfiring. There's just a different way that the brains of people who stammer are configured, that there could be a misfiring of neurons, but it has nothing to do with intellect. It has nothing to do with cognition. It's just the way that the speech and language is processed by that brain is different and is disfluent.
Okay, so let us look at the characteristics. And you said you love working with children. So what are some of the red flags, or do they show when a child is still young that probably as they grow they'll stammer?
Yes, absolutely. There are children who, from the minute they open their mouths, there is a type of disfluency. So they are probably repeating words. And for most cases of children, like, there is something called developmental disfluency. So that is a period of time when little children are just learning language, and they might repeat, or a child is, referring or getting their mother's attention. They go, mama, mama, I. So that is a characteristic. It's a repetition. But there is a difference between that natural period of disfluency and a stuttering disorder or a fluency disorder. And that period, the way to differentiate between that period of natural disfluency and this other full-blown stuttering is that natural disfluency will take place between about 2 years and 2.5 years, depending on when your child is experiencing the most language, the steepest language development, and that usually coincides with the ages of 2 and 2.5. I mean, if your child is a later talker, maybe the natural disfluency might happen a bit later. So there are children, initially most children might present with some type of stutter that isn't very, it's not unnerving. You can see this child is able to get the words out eventually, but then there are children who you feel there are other things that accompany the mundane repetitions. So they might be opening their mouth to talk and then nothing is coming out. So that is a characteristic of a stutter, and that is called a block. So a block, this child knows what they want to say. It happens with adults as well, but nothing comes out. There just seems to be tension somewhere that they're holding. And so that's one example, a block. So we said repetition, and the repetition can be a word repetition, or it can be part of a word. So I could be repeating, instead of saying thank you, I might say that. Yeah, so that's part of the word thank. Yeah, so I could be doing that, or I could be repeating the entire phrase, thank you, thank you, thank you. I could be saying I want. So that is a 2 words repetition. You could also be repeating a sound. And if the sound is one that is prolonged, then that is another characteristic of a stutter called a prolongation. And it happens mostly for sounds that can be stretched out. So a sound like S. So you'd find a child saying snake, or they might say f, and then repeating and then saying fish. But you might also get a b, bus. You see the difference? So the B, you couldn't stretch it, but you still repeated, and it wasn't a full word, it was just a sound that you were repeating. So that's another characteristic. Other characteristics are probably things that most people won't consider characteristics of a stutter or a disfluency, and that is avoidance. And we see that a lot with people who stammer. There are particular words they don't want to say. Yeah, so this has happened, like when I'm in a session with a child, and you can see they know a trigger, they know a particular sound is a trigger for a stutter for them, and so they avoid it altogether and say something else. Or in most of the children I encounter at the beginning, you'll ask them a question, are you hungry? And they might go, did you come with daddy? So they're just nodding and shaking, because they've figured out talking is just a little challenging for me. And lastly, there's something else called superfluous movements. So superfluous movements are when something else that is over and above what you would expect a person to do it. Like I'm using my hands as I'm talking. I don't feel like they are over and above. I feel like it's helping bring my points across, and because I'm truly passionate about this. But if I was twitching, and if you could see like tapping, so that is additional, that is unnecessary, that really is distracting, and that is actually one characteristic of a stutter. And sorry, I did say final, but I have one more. And so that use of fillers. So a filler is and we do that. So all of us actually have an element of disfluent speech, and that is fine. Actually, I think the acceptable disfluency is probably at about 10% or 20% of what you do. If you're always, there are people who will just habitually, they'll start a sentence by saying, or well, so that if a person who stammers is doing or overusing fillers, then that for them could be a characteristic of their own stutter.
Okay, so I don't know whether avoidance is we can say it's an intervention, but probably you can just tell us what are some of the interventions to stammering. And other than maybe avoiding, as you've said, the letter S or the letter Y, there are some that will find a word that replaces probably the word that they would have wanted to use at that particular time.
I mean, that is a really great question and observation, but avoidance really is a strategy, but it's a maladaptive one nonetheless. So it is one that doesn't really, it helps you stammer fluently as opposed to changing how you communicate so that you stammer less. So the difference here is I can decide I'll not be saying the word cup, for example, because each time I say the sound k, it triggers a stammer. So I decide I'll never say the word cup. And if what would you like to, what size cup would you like? Oh, no, I'll have the mug. So I might just replace it. Yeah. But has that really helped this person address their issues with the k, with how they get out the k sound? It hasn't. So is it practical for them to actually go around life avoiding k? Because k is everywhere, even car passing, there's k sounds everywhere. So it is probably more beneficial for this person to be taught a strategy that will actually help them stammer less on the k sound as opposed to avoiding it altogether.
Okay, so we will look at the strategies later on. But you've talked of stammering coming in during childhood. Can it probably occur in adulthood, or is it something that you grow along with?
Well, so you can have a sudden onset of stammering, and usually it is not, if you have a familial history, and I said 60% of people who stammer can trace their stammering back to their family. And most times, not most times, a lot of the times when I do have children who come in and I ask, is there somebody in the family who stammers? Because I will take the background information, and that helps even in the advice that I give the family. Because if you have an active, history of stammering in the family, then I would say to the parents, err on caution, let us intervene now so that this doesn't end up becoming something permanent. But there are children, there are adults, even children, that will start stammering, and there's really, as I said, there's 40% chance that your stammer is really not as a result of family history or familial link, and it could be maybe triggered by trauma, it could be triggered by it could be maybe another medical condition that you have that is triggering that has caused the stammer. But yes, the answer is yes, you can have a sudden onset of a stammer even in adulthood or later in childhood, and it's not always that stammering is developmental, like you have it from when you're little, and then so.
Just to take you back a little, you said family history can be a cause. Is there any other cause, probably damage to the brain in adulthood, that can lead to one stammering?
Yeah, absolutely. The brain is what controls body processes, and speech being one of them. Speech being one of them. If you fall from a very tall building and you probably have a cognitive impairment as a result, you could end up having a kind of a stammer. I do see a difference between the stammer that is sort of that's cognitive based. I find I can usually tell the difference. I can say this is a stammer that is probably as a result of something traumatic happening to the brain, like a traumatic brain injury, as opposed to the children or the adults who stammer that can't trace their stammering to trauma. Their stammer does not impact on language as well. They might just they speak, they have, the language is usually pretty good, although there's a lot of research that shows that children who stammer can also have learning disorders as well as language issues, but that could be because of all the other things that are associated with you having a stammer, either because you feel, you lack in confidence, or, you're too scared to put your hand up. So even if you're not understanding, you're not really raising your hand for the teacher to help you. So as a result, you might just be performing slightly lower or below average, not because you don't have the aptitude for that subject or those concepts, but because maybe the stammer is what is the obstacle for you. So yes, you can have traumatic brain injury can cause a stammer, but I normally have found that they are different in this person who stammers because maybe they fell or they had a motor vehicle accident. They might also be stuck with using words, or they might not also have a problem understanding. So you see people who stammer don't have a problem understanding. Understanding is still part of language, but you will see other features that are just not truly as a result of the stammer.
Let us look at speech therapy, yeah? And what happens in a speech therapy session to improve one's speech?
So it depends again with the age of the child. So if the child is below the age of 5 or below the age of 6, or they've just had a recent onset of the stammering, so really they haven't been stammering for very long, the session is a bit different from if we are working with a child that has probably been stammering for 2 years, or 2 months, or maybe 2 months not, maybe 5 years, or an adult. So for the younger population that have just started stammering, there's a lot of operant conditioning to our intervention. So operant conditioning is very much about using the principles of behavior change. Yeah, so we don't always alert or do anything to overt to target the stammering. It's always just in supporting, in offering reinforcement, so praise when the child is being smooth, and always just creating situations and conditions or structuring the sessions so that this child has more of an opportunity to produce more fluent speech. So I'll do that so when they come to the session, if we're reading a book, I'm not going to say to them, oh, tell me the story back, because there's a chance of them saying too many things. So I might just say, was a story about a pig, was a story about a goat. So I have given closed questions so that I get one word back, and then I build it up to a point where I'm also supporting their growth in language in other, during the session, so that they now even know this is how I answer a question to do with why. I might start with it's because. So I'm helping them be able to also structure their thoughts, to be able to now increase their opportunity to always produce, or to produce more smooth speech. Then for the adults or for the older kids, we tackle other things other than just the stammering as well. So we do tackle the stammering in that we will offer strategies that they can use. And there are quite a number of strategies that are well researched that can help a person that is disfluent, be more smooth. So one of them will be the way so one of them is actually going to be breathing techniques, how to relax different parts of your body, how to relax your articulators, how to sense where the tension is when you are having a block. So you're trying to say the word bus and you're going, where is the tension? So we help children figure out, where is the tension? Was it in the throat? And then they try and relax it, and then they start again. We also teach them how to perhaps start a bit more gently. So they all have names, and we would demonstrate and we'll do it. And then we also teach them what to do when they are now stuck in a stammer, how to cancel it out, how to pull out of it, how to restart again more confidently. But we also, more importantly, we target, their emotion, their psychology. We target how they feel, their anxiety, because stammering is actually there is a big correlation or between people who stammer and their levels of anxiety. So they tend to have more anxiety levels. They also can have low self-esteem, so we target that as well. How do you advocate for yourself as an adult if you stammer? We teach you some of those techniques as well. And then we create scenarios later after we've given you the strategies. We create scenarios that help you practice. So perhaps you're always struggling to read in front of class, so we will give you reading strategies for how you can be more fluent. Perhaps you stammer more when you're answering the phone, so we'll create situations where you actually get to speak on the phone, order a pizza or whatever. So we make it really functional.
Well, I'll say there's a lot of stigma associated to stammering. As a speech therapy, what is your word to a caregiver, to a child that stammers, or an adult that is stammering?
It is so right that there is such stigma, and people who stammer have the worst time in social situations. And I say to parents, you have to be the person that is allowing or giving your child time to say what it is that's on their mind. Also sensitize the other children around your child that stammers, to to be sensitive with the things that they say to them, perhaps not to always answer or finish their sentences for them, not to ask questions like, why are you talking like that? And I say to parents, you know, they don't realize this, but for children or people who stammer, it is so difficult for them to hear something positive said to them about their talking. So they probably overhear people say, and why is he talking like that? And why is she talking like that? Or, and why did you repeat? Why do you talk like that? You know, so you have to be the person that is constantly helping them realize that they still have wonderful stories to tell, and that they are still brilliant, and that they are still, you know, all the things that you want to say to them. And you should be able to see beyond the, you know, the stammers that they present as they are talking. So that is what I normally say, to them.
Well, any other thing probably that you'd want to add, a parting shot, or just something general about speech and communication?
Yeah. You always never understand the magnitude of a challenge unless it is actually something that you battle yourself, or you know somebody close to you that's battling it. I mean, always showing empathy and being empowered and understanding what something is. And for stammering, realizing a person who stammers actually does know what it is that they want to say, that it is nothing to do with IQ or intelligence, and it's just a misfiring, and it could happen to anyone. So taking the time to befriend and that person that you know that stammers, and getting them to just letting them opening yourself to them, feeling vulnerable and telling you how it is for them, as opposed to judging them. So I think that is how we can be good neighbors and good friends and more sensitive humans.
Thank you so much. And you'll agree with me that we haven't just learned about stammering, but we've generally learned about speech, language, and communication. To you at home, thank you so much for tuning in. See you again next Monday. My name is Ida Munzati. Let's continue creating awareness and even learning and informing ourselves about different health topics and health matters. I've been your host, Ida Munzati. Until next Monday, your health matters.